All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we are continuing, technically finishing our discussion about the elements of art, the ingredients, the parts and pieces used to make artwork. Today we're finishing up with space. So at this point, we've pretty much gone over all of them. Color, value, line, shape, form, texture, and space is today. And we're going to be talking specifically about space. Space is the area inside, outside, and between, around shapes and forms. So pretty much all of this. Okay. So all of this is space. And when we talk about space in art, we're really talking about three components. We're talking about positive and negative space. We are talking about creating the illusion of space in an artwork. And we are talking about the fields of space in an artwork. Okay. And we'll get there. All right. So first we're going to address positive and negative. Positive space is the area that is occupied by a subject. So I occupy positive space. All of the emptiness, we know scientifically it's not really empty, but all of the emptiness around me is negative space. So positive space is the area that is occupied. Negative space is the area that is empty. In this case, the black Swiss cheese is positive space. The little holes in the cheese, negative space. Don't eat black Swiss cheese. Okay, so you guys have probably seen this illusion before. It's really just a play on positive space and negative space, which areas are occupied and which areas are empty. It really just depends on where your focus is. So, for example, in this particular image, they're the exact same image, they're just inverted. In this one, if you focus on the white space, the area that is supposedly negative space, you should see the vase. Whereas if you pay attention to the positive space, the black areas, you should see faces. They're simply inverted in this other image. It just depends on where you focus, and that will determine what you see. So faces and vases, vase, if you are so inclined. All right. So here's an example of an artwork that's really playing with the positive and negative space. This is Paper Sun. It's about Alberto Morel. It's just a stack of paper. Do you see the face? There is a profile image. You've got his hair here. You've got his forehead. You've got his nose, chin, probably the collar right here, but you can see the face. If you focus primarily on the gray background, it'll make it a lot easier to see. But this is just a stack of paper that's been manipulated to put a portrait in it. It's really cool. So that play with positive and negative space is really important. In fact, artists kind of love to play with it. For example, it's really hard to determine where one leg ends and the other begins. They interlock. This is a bear hug. All right. So you can see the shapes. You know what they're doing. This one's really trippy because if you try to figure out where one begins and where one ends, you can't really discern it. This one's just cute because reasons. Let's get more complex. So this is a cover image for Peter and the Wolf. It is a symphony story. I don't know I can't remember the exact term for it, but it's a story. And if you look closely, it's pretty easy to see the wolf. You're looking from the top down, you see the wolf, you see the duck. Yes, it's a duck. For those of you who tell me every class period that there's a rat, it's a duck, quack, quack. Okay, but you got the wolf, you've got the duck. And if you look really closely and focus on the snow, you'll see Peter in the wolf. Which actually, if you know the story, makes a lot of sense. All right. So to help you, in case you can't see it, you have his hair, bangs, got his little forehead right here. You can see the indent with his nose and his eyelash, his lips, his chin. There's his face. Focus on the white, you'll see it. This one's a little bit more trippy. So stepping back, if you look at it from a distance, it's really easy to see the skull. Skull usually symbolizes death. We get it. But if you start looking a little bit closer, you'll realize that the eye sockets are actually a woman. So here's the back of her head. Here's her face. The skull piece is a mirror. This is a vanity. She is sitting at a table in front of a large mirror. She is looking at herself in the chair. Over here, what we see as teeth in the skull are actually makeup bottles and perfumes. Okay. The nose is constructed as a reflection from the background, a candle that is behind her. We see all of these things and we wonder, why in the world would the artist choose to represent this woman in front of her makeup stand, putting on her pretties, but make it into a skull? Well, back in the day, a lot of makeup contained elements and minerals that were incredibly dangerous. Lead, mercury, in some cases, uranium were found in makeup products. That was something that they used because at that point, they didn't really know it was going to kill you. So the act of putting on makeup was actually a way to, yeah, you would hurt yourself. All right. Yoink. Now here's some more modern logos. You've seen most of these, and they all play on positive and negative space. FedEx right here. You've probably had it pointed out to you before at this point, but right here between the E and X is an arrow. I don't remember exactly what the original slogan was, but there was a getting it there or something like that as far as the slogan, and it involved an arrow. And when they redesigned from Federal Express to FedEx, they incorporated that arrow into the logo design. It is entirely intentional. USA, that S does not exist, y'all. That is negative space. That is the emptiness between the A and the U. Yes, that means that the A has a really funky nose. He looks like he's opening his mouth. But you get it. There's a peacock here in NBC, has been forever, for those of you who are just now seeing the bird. Okay, it's always been a peacock. Fox Chase Publisher. Now this we're getting a little bit more detailed because the shape that we see right here that makes his little forepaws, it's a pen nib. It is the tip of a fountain pen. You've ever seen one of those little pens that you dip into ink and then you write with it and you have to dip it into ink again? That's the tip of one of those. A publisher publishes or puts out and produces written work. Gets works from authors and then puts it out for people to read and consume. Fox Chase Publisher, so you see a little adorable fox and you see the pen nib. Very clever. The same thing is going on here with the Guild of Food Writers. So you have a pen nib, again, because they're writers, but now the interior, the well of the pen is a spoon, which you need to eat food. So it works. These ones are even more fun. This one is freaking brilliant. Ed's Electric. Ed's Electric. E's right here. E, you see the plug and you see the socket. It is incredibly simple. It is absolutely brilliant. That is beautiful design. This one right here, Baby Sleep Safe. It's a brand that makes baby night clothes and things like that, and to make sure that they prevent sleeping hazards and stuff like that. So you see the little sleepy moon, and you see the sweet little squishy baby face. Baby Sleep Safe. Okay. Safari into Africa, it's a little bit more tongue in cheek. You literally have Africa inside of an elephant. I really have this here more for the Hope of African Children initiative because this logo design is fantastic. You can very clearly see the woman, you can very clearly see the child, and you understand it in Africa. In fact, if you actually look at this one, you can see where the artist got those shapes. The female form is right here. You can clearly see it. The kiddo, the only thing that I have a quirk with is when I see the kiddo here, I'm like, what happened to his hair? There's definitely hair in the original, but that's just me. But I mean, this is brilliant. This, sorry, Spartan Golf Club, that one's just really cool to look at. So obviously the first thing you're probably going to notice is the golfer. You see the guy swinging the club, you see the power of the stroke. If you've played golf video games ever, every stroke looks just like that. They use it as a power meter. Do you see the Spartan helmet? There's a Greek helmet stuck in here, which is Spartans are Greek. So the white space is meant to be the metal casing of the helm. This power stroke is actually the comb, the horsehair that goes down the back of that. And then the face is right here in the golfer. This white space right here is the eyeball. Here's the nose, there's the mouth and the chin. This is brilliant design. This is beautiful. Now, another component that we use, we talked about positive and negative space. The other thing that it's early. Another thing that space is used for is the illusion of depth. I'm sure you guys have looked at paintings before where they're portraying a huge sense of distance, majestic mountains way back in the background, maybe some stuff in the foreground, and we see all of these spaces. That's what we use space for in art. These are all illusions. It's a flat canvas. It is painted to look like there's a lot of depth. And we use these sorts of techniques. Now, all of these are things that you see every single day. We are just putting a name to it. So when we talk about atmospheric perspective, We're talking about overlapping. We're talking about scale, placement, detail, color, and value. Now, there's also a really mathematical approach to it, linear perspective, which is non-atmospheric perspective. It involves lines and ratios and all kinds of fun stuff that goes into that. All right, so let's talk about these one by one. Overlapping. Overlapping happens when one object covers another. What's in front? Me or the cup? Obviously the cup, because it's blocking half of my face. That is an example of overlapping. In this example with the pumpkins, you know that this pumpkin right here is up towards the front and are way in the back because they're being overlapped. This is an example. This is Man on a Bench by Horace Pippin. It's an incredibly flat painting. There's not a whole lot of shading. The forms are not rounded out. But you still understand that this man is sitting on the bench, which is in front of the trees. Do not ask me what the white animal is. I have no freaking clue. No idea. Squirrel, rabbit, dog dancing in the back. I don't know. But nevertheless, because objects are overlapping, the man is overlapping the bench. He's blocking parts of it from view. You know exactly that he is on that bench because that your brain puts that together. Now we're just naming what it is. Scale is when an object that is closer appears to be larger than an object that is farther. You have two objects, the exact same size. You hold one really close to your face and you hold one off to a distance. And the one close to your face is going to be huge. And the one way off there is going to be much, much smaller. Don't believe me? Fun experiment. Look across the classroom at a student who is at a distance from you. Use your little fingers, close one eye, hold your arm at full extension. Look at how big my hand is, side note. Okay, but you're going to hold your hand at a distance and you're going to measure one of the classmates that are all the way across the classroom. Take that size, freeze your hand, locked, and you're going to move it to somebody who's closer to you, like right next to you. And I bet this isn't even big enough for their head. It's an appearance thing. When they're farther away, they appear smaller. When it's closer, it appears larger. This is an artistic example. We're going to do that same measuring technique. It's really important that your arm is fully extended for this. If you bend your elbow at all, the measurement's not accurate. So hold your arm out all the way, close one eye. And what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you measure this tree right here. Your upper finger, your index finger, the bottom of it needs to touch the top of this tree. Your thumb needs to come, because the tree's got a root system, your thumb needs to go to the bottom of this root system down here. So you're going to pinch that tree. Hold it at a distance. You're going to pinch that tree and you're going to lock your hand. Keep your elbow extended. And then you're going to slide your hand over. And I want you to hold it up in comparison to this mountain. What you should be noticing right now is that that tree in the painting is the exact same size as that mountain. Do you think that's how it looked in reality? You think that tree is as big as that mountain? But the artist, Verstaat, painted those two objects the same size on canvas. And he used that as a way to show great distance. We know that that mountain is not the same size as that tree. We know it because we've experienced the world. Mountains and trees are not usually the same. So we know that that mountain is infinitely larger, but because he painted them the same size, what that does to our brain is it tricks our brain into thinking that mountain is very, very far away. And he supports that illusion by taking this species of tree and repeating its shape, getting progressively smaller as it gets farther away. So he uses this tree to kind of push that mountain way off into the distance. So we know we're dealing with a big, wide open space, and the painting feels that way. Moving on. Placement. Things that are higher up in the picture plane appear farther away. Pieces that are lower in the picture plane appear closer. So these life preservers look like they might be within reach, whereas those ones, you're going to go for a swim. Okay. This is a 3D rendered image, but we're going to talk about these two pieces here. Now, this is a collage. This is a still life number 12. Let's talk about art titles again. By Tom Wesselmann. And what he would do is he would have a painted background, and then he would raid ads at the time, newspapers and magazine ads, and he'd cut out parts and pieces and he would arrange them into little sceneries. What's closer? This this can of coffee or the apple? The coffee is closer. It is lower on the picture plane. We understand that it is closer to us and that apple is arranged on the windowsill. They're roughly the same size. The coffee can's a little bit bigger. They're roughly the same size, but we can still understand that sense of depth, even though looking at it, the image appears very flat. Something is similar going on right over here. Now, we don't know exactly who the artist is, but we can see this absolutely amazing palace, and we see all of these people wandering around. While these people are a little bit smaller going off into the distance, there's really not that much of a difference. We understand these people to be really far away and these people to be up close because these ones are low in the picture plane. These ones are high in the picture plane. Want to create distance, lows and highs, okay? Detail. This one should be really, really obvious when you think about it. If it's closer to you, you see more detail. You notice more parts and pieces. If it's farther away, not so much. If I was straight up in your face, like this far away, you would 100% be able to see my eyelashes. And you're going to hope that I brushed my teeth. I did. Not the point. Whereas from across the classroom, you might see a dark line indicating where my lashes and my eyebrows are, but you're not going to see the individual hairs of it when you're all the way across the classroom. That's detail. You notice more details when things are close. This is South Beach Bathers. Please notice the date, y'all. This is over 100 years ago. Most of those people are wearing bathing suits, not all of them. But let's look closely. People that are closer, all of these people have faces. They have eyes, they have lips. You can see their nose. This one's got a huge freaking dimple. You can see their faces. These people back here don't have them. There are no faces. These people, you know, they're people. You don't see anything. You don't need to see anything. There's no reason for the artist to have spent all this time painting all that extra detail if they're trying to create the illusion of depth. So you've got detail up here in the foreground. You can see textures, you can see wrinkles in the clothes, you can see flowers in her hat. And way back there in the background, they're just blocks of color. You don't need it. By having more detail in things that are closer, you create the illusion of depth. Color and value. Now, this is a photograph. Okay. Up close, colors will be richer, they will be darker, and they will be warmer. So this right here is the brightest and the warmest color on this photograph. It is a yellow green. Okay. This is the darkest dark. This is the brightest bright. And way back here in the distance, this back line of mountains, these are an incredibly light, pale, utterly detailless blue. That's another way to create it. And the reason for that is that the further things are away from us, the more air there is. Think about it. What color is the sky on a nice clean day? It's blue. So at a distance, you've got all of that extra atmosphere between you and what you're seeing. Well, if the sky is blue, the air, when you have that much of it, appears blue. It has to do with the molecules in it and what lights are getting reflected out of it. But there's more of that stuff between you and what you're seeing. So it becomes lighter and it becomes bluer. Okay. If there were different chemicals involved in the atmosphere, the colors would be different. Here is a painted example. Okay. This is Manchester Square. No, the horse's face is not that long. That is a feed bag. Horse is waiting for his fare. That's why he's in a yellow cab and he's munching on some snacks. Let him have his snacks. Okay. The person right over here pushing this cart, the darkest color in this painting is right here on that spot. The lightest color is right here on the wheel. Okay. And way back in the distance, all of these buildings have faded into gray. Now, why grays and not blue? Doesn't really look like a bright, clear day, does it? It's a cloudy, rainy day. So the artist chose to use grays instead. Now, linear perspective, we've talked about this briefly before. It is a mathematical way to approach distance. So you're taking these lines that normally would run parallel. I mean, same direction without ever touching. You're taking these lines that would normally run parallel and you are making them converge. They come to a point. Okay. So do you really think if you were to walk down this pathway that the sides of this pathway would close in on you into this tiny little space that you could no longer fit through? That would be a really bad path. Okay. So they don't actually come together, but they are painted to look like they come together. And the reason for that, again, is to show distance. That looks like it's fading off into the distance. Now, this one is convoluted. There are so many points of perspective going on in this particular image. This is a subway by George Tucker, 1950. There's a lot of social things going on that are leading to every person in here looking both suspicious and creepy. But you can tell what's close. You can tell what's far away. You can see things going off into the distance. And while the image is incredibly uncomfortable, and there's a lot of historical things for why this is, you can visually understand all of this distance that's going on. Which hallways go where, what goes down, what goes up, what goes sideways, the whole works. Lots of things going on in this picture. Now, the last component, we talked about positive and negative. We talked about creating the illusion of depth. The last component when we're dealing with space has to do with the layers of the artwork. What's close to you, what's far from you, and how to talk about it. So we talk about the foreground, the midground, and the background. I know it's the middle ground. I'm never going to say it. All right. Foreground, for front. That's an F. Foreground is the front space. So that's going to be, in this case, it's going to be the trees. It's going to be this road. It's going to be this grassy hill right here. That's all what's close to us. We can see a lot of detail. The colors are warm. They're bright. The whole works. Middle ground obviously is in the middle. I mean, I wish there was an easier way to describe it, but really, honestly, that's pretty much it. Midground is the stuff that lies in the middle, between the foreground and the background. So this bluish purple mountain with the details of the trees, that's in the middle. We know it's behind what's in front of us and in front of what's way back in the back. The background is the farthest objects away. So that's going to be these mountains back here. Technically, the sky and the clouds and the sun could be considered part of the background. Usually they're slightly separate, but there's multiple layers. So, you know, foreground for front, midground for middle, background for back. And I'm still going to have some of y'all screw that up. I'm not judging. Yeah, I am. All right. So this is a really cool example. This is Hunters in the Snow. This is by Peter Bruegel the Elder. Guys, look at that date. Does that look like something, if you went north, does that look like something that you would see in a small town? People don't change much. We really don't. But you can very clearly delineate, that means discern, that means figure out where the foreground is, the middle ground is, and the background. So the foreground is obviously these houses and these hunters and these dogs. And this one looks like a little bitty chunky bratwurst. Hi, bratwurst. Okay. The midground is going to be, it kind of fades into each other. They're not always so completely separate. Sometimes, and usually they bleed into each other. So these ice rinks right here are definitely midground, but so are some of these houses going into that region. I would say the midground probably ends at about this hill and these lines where you can actually still see windows on some of these houses. The background are all of these mountains. You can still see buildings, you can still see some trees, but all of this is way off in the distance and it's painted smaller, lighter, all of those things that we've talked about. So foreground, midground, background. And now we're just looking at pretties. So we have a lot of different examples of art and how they handled space. So Akbar and the Elephant of Hawaii, 1590, so same time as the painting, same time frame as this one. Look at how differently they handle space. You can tell what's close, you can tell what's far away. I'm not sure that elephants really walk at that angle, easily anyways. But it's handled so completely different. And then this one, Habaku Sansui, look at how differently that is handled. You see the stuff that's close to us, but way off in the distance, you don't have to see much there to know that's way far away, covered in fog or clouds or whatnot. Okay, completely different handling of space, but we still understand the distance. This is another Van Gogh painting. This is Corridor in the Asylum. This is a really good example of linear perspective. He doesn't have a whole lot of color and detail going on. He's usually got the same colors here going on in the background, but we still get the illusion of depth because of the lines, because of how they fade off into that vanishing point that we talked about. They converge. Okay. This one's just weird. Disintegration of Persistence of Memory by Dali. Now, There's a lot of stuff going on here. There's a lot of distance going on. There's a lot of metaphor and hidden language going on about how memory lasts over time or fades over time, or, you know, things kind of change and details alter a little bit. But you can see a lot of linear perspective in how these boxes are treated. You can see a lot of atmospheric perspective in the fact that this is obviously close to us, and this Rock of Gibraltar looking thing back here is very far. We can still see that. This is all about positive and negative space, as clearly said in the title. Now, for fun, we can look at this and we can see all kinds of stuff going on. If you look at this and you start imagining what these could be, you might see 3 people, you might see 3 moons, there's a pyramid back here, maybe they're on a temple. This could look like a spaceship or a warehouse. I mean, you could have a lot of fun trying to figure out what all this is supposed to represent. I don't think it really represents much. I think it's just cool looking, but it is cool looking. All right. And then this one, this is Summer Shower. This is by Edith Haylar, 1837. This pretty much covers all of the perspective things that we just talked about. You got a foreground, you got a midground, you got a background. Positive negative space is not as prevalent here, but that's just in general. This is how you see things. Atmospheric perspective. Let's talk about overlapping. Now, this table is definitely in front of this dude. These people are definitely outside the door. You know what's overlapping? Scale. These people are way bigger than this dude. In fact, I think he's maybe the same height as this guy's torso, roughly. You see color and value. These colors are really rich. Those ones way back here are very pale. Okay, see a lot of detail. She has a face, she does not. All right, all of that stuff, linear perspective, because you can see all of these lines coming together. Look at the tiles specifically, and that'll support it. All of it's represented here. So space is really kind of fun. And then 2 completely different spaces. You have Ideal City, 1492. You have Monk by the Sea in 1809. You got this one little dude standing here, and look at how empty all that feels. And then over here, even without any people, it feels crowded, clustered, full. Linear perspective, atmospheric perspective. A lot of things going on here. A lot of things with space. Make sure that when you're creating your drawings, you're giving me that sense of illusion and that sense of depth. Other than that, you guys got some work to do. Get going.